So we're out of the pickle, dry it off. Now, did you know that you can dissolve flux just by running this under the hot water tap? It's true. It doesn't take the oxides off, but it will take the flux off. So now we're going to round this up before we do anything else. And if it's too small to fit on your mandrel, and I'm using a bezel mandrel for this, which is just a smaller version of your ring mandrel, you can just hold this sideways, and I usually hold it with my flat round pliers to save my fingers. Tap it, and it'll deform it rounder so that we can then go on our little mandrel and round it up. Be sure to flip it over so that you don't end up with a taper. Get both ends nice and round. Now you're going to hold this and file these ends flat. Number 2 cut flat hand file again. And it's difficult to hold, except that your handy flat round pliers will let you hold it. So file until you have a nice shiny spot all the way around. Same thing on the other side. Now, this was a fairly respectable join, so there's not a lot of solder. And we just use our 400 grade paper on a flat sanding stick, and we're just going to follow the curve. Be sure you get all of the solder off. In case I haven't said it before, solder is a different alloy, and if you don't get all of the solder off except for the tiny little line in the join, when this oxidizes, and it will oxidize the next day, the solder will oxidize darker than the silver. And if you just pay attention while you're doing this, that won't happen to you. So we want to get it so all the solder is off and our line is invisible. Now, because we formed this on our mandrel, it will be work hardened again, so let's anneal it again before we start to shape it. Now when you're annealing, a dull red, what you can do is you can put a spot of flux on it. When the flux goes clear, stop, because that is just before the solder melts. And annealing is always cooler, less temperature than soldering. So when you're annealing, you should never make the solder flow, because if you do, you've gotten it too hot. So just a dull red, quench it and pickle it again. Now I want to shape these ends so that they come in. So what I'm going to do is put my piece in the doming block, and I'm going to hold my chasing hammer on top so that it holds it nice and flat, and I'm just going to hit it, the hammer, with my rawhide hammer. So you can see that that is starting to bow that in. So now I'll flip it and do the same thing on the other end. And by using this hammer, I can actually see whether my bead is straight up and down or not. Now, if your bead is doing what you want it to do, keep working back and forth, and that's what I want. I wanted it to be slightly domed with the rounded ends, and I want these ends to come in until they're about 4 or 5 millimeters. If you're hammering on this and it isn't moving, anneal it again, because you've work hardened it by doming it. So I just stuck this on the end of one of my brushes to polish it. So you can see that it has its little message. It's been hallmarked. It's polished. It is slightly bigger than the original one I made, but if you were going to put a piece of chenille in there to make it so that it was a hollow bead, fantastic. But what I would do for the next one is I would make it slightly shorter. So this one being flat, the length was 16 millimeters, and that's with 0.9 thick material to end up with a 4.2 hole. This one I made 30 millimeters long, which is slightly bigger, so I would make it slightly smaller. But once again, it's just part of the big experiment. Oftentimes you actually have to make something to see whether it does what you think it will do. So I'm quite happy with the process. And another little bead. Ciao.